Tonight, the world is watching a rapidly escalating crisis that could redefine global stability. In just a matter of days, tensions between the United States and Iran have intensified to levels not seen in years, raising serious questions about whether diplomacy is failing and whether conflict may be closer than many expected. Military analysts say movements across strategic regions suggest preparation, not posturing. Satellite imagery, defense briefings, and sudden deployments are all signaling the same message: something significant is unfolding behind closed doors. At the center of it all stands Donald Trump, whose latest warning to Tehran has sent shockwaves through global markets and political circles alike. Oil prices are reacting, allies are urging restraint, and rival powers are closely monitoring every development. Tonight, we break down what has changed, why the situation escalated so quickly, and what the next few days could mean for millions of people worldwide. Because if negotiations collapse, experts warn the consequences may extend far beyond one region, reshaping alliances, economies, and security across the globe. The clock is ticking, and every statement, every movement, and every decision now carries enormous weight.
The current crisis began when Washington issued what officials describe as a decisive diplomatic ultimatum tied to Iran's nuclear ambitions. According to senior administration sources speaking from Washington, D.C., the message was clear: return to strict negotiations within a limited time frame or face escalating consequences. The administration argues that previous agreements failed to slow uranium enrichment and that stronger pressure is now necessary to prevent a potential security threat. Iranian leadership, however, views the demand as coercion rather than negotiation, insisting that its nuclear program remains defensive and lawful under international frameworks. This disagreement has transformed routine diplomatic tension into a high-stakes geopolitical standoff. Behind the scenes, envoys continue attempting quiet dialogue, but public rhetoric has grown sharper with each passing day. Markets reacted immediately, signaling investor concern that miscalculation could spiral into confrontation. What makes this moment particularly volatile is the speed at which diplomatic language has shifted towards strategic warnings. Analysts say deadlines in international politics rarely exist without contingency planning, meaning both sides are preparing for outcomes beyond diplomacy. The question now is no longer whether tensions exist, but whether either side is willing to step back before irreversible decisions are made.
To understand today's crisis, we must look back at years of mistrust, sanctions, and failed negotiations that gradually built toward this moment. Relations between Washington and Tehran have long been shaped by competing security concerns, regional influence, and nuclear capability fears. American officials argue that expanding enrichment technology shortens the timeline required to produce weapons-grade material, creating what they call an unacceptable strategic risk. Iranian leaders counter that sanctions and economic pressure have violated prior agreements, forcing them to expand nuclear research as leverage. Over time, diplomatic channels narrowed, while political rhetoric intensified, leaving fewer paths toward compromise. Experts say both governments are also responding to domestic audiences, projecting strength while avoiding the appearance of weakness. This dynamic makes de-escalation politically difficult, even when leaders privately seek stability. The broader Middle East adds another layer of complexity, as regional rivalries amplify every move. Allies and adversaries alike interpret actions through their own security interests, increasing the risk of misunderstanding. What we are witnessing today is not a sudden crisis, but the result of accumulated tension finally reaching a breaking point, where even small actions can trigger massive geopolitical reactions.
Perhaps the most alarming development is the visible increase in military positioning across strategic waterways and airspace. Defense officials confirmed that additional naval assets, surveillance aircraft, and rapid response forces have been repositioned under orders coordinated through the Pentagon. Officials publicly described these moves as defensive deterrence intended to protect regional allies and ensure freedom of navigation. However, military analysts note that such deployments also provide operational readiness should diplomacy fail. Aircraft carriers serve as mobile command centers capable of launching sustained operations, while advanced fighter jets allow rapid escalation within hours rather than days. Historically, similar buildups have preceded negotiations, but also conflicts. The ambiguity is intentional, creating pressure without committing to action. Intelligence monitoring has increased dramatically, and regional bases are reportedly operating under heightened alert levels. For civilians watching from afar, these developments may appear technical, but within military strategy, they represent a powerful signal. The presence of force changes calculations on both sides, increasing deterrence while simultaneously raising the stakes of any misinterpretation. In crises like this, history shows that perception can be just as dangerous as intention. Iranian officials have responded with firm language, rejecting what they describe as external pressure designed to limit national sovereignty. State media broadcasts emphasize resilience, portraying the country as prepared to withstand economic and military challenges alike. Leaders insist negotiations must occur without threats, warning that any attack would trigger a proportional response across multiple fronts. Military commanders have highlighted defensive missile systems and regional alliances, signaling readiness rather than retreat. Analysts say this messaging serves two purposes: reassuring domestic audiences while deterring potential strikes by raising the perceived cost of escalation. Diplomatic intermediaries have attempted to reopen talks, including discussions expected to take place in Geneva, traditionally used for sensitive negotiations. Yet public statements remain uncompromising, reflecting deep distrust between both governments. Experts warn that when both sides frame confrontation as defense, compromise becomes harder to achieve. Each announcement, each televised speech, and each military exercise contributes to an atmosphere where backing down may appear politically impossible. That dynamic creates a dangerous cycle, one where rhetoric escalates faster than diplomacy can contain it. The stakes extend far beyond regional politics. Energy analysts warn that any disruption near the Strait of Hormuz could send shockwaves through the global economy. Nearly a fifth of the world's oil supply moves through this narrow waterway, making it one of the most strategically important routes on Earth. Even the threat of instability can drive prices upward, affecting transportation, manufacturing, and household costs worldwide. Financial markets have already shown signs of volatility as investors brace for uncertainty. European and Asian allies are urging restraint, fearing economic fallout that could slow global growth. Beyond economics, humanitarian organizations warn that conflict could destabilize already fragile regions, creating displacement crises and security challenges lasting years. Military confrontation in this area rarely remains contained. Alliances and rivalries quickly draw additional actors into the situation. That is why international leaders are pushing urgently for dialogue, not only to avoid war, but to prevent a chain reaction capable of reshaping global trade and security structures for decades.
As negotiations continue behind closed doors, the world now waits through a tense and uncertain countdown. Diplomats race to find common ground, while military planners prepare for outcomes they hope never occur. Every statement from leaders, every movement at sea, and every negotiation update carries enormous significance. History shows that moments like this can end in unexpected compromise or sudden escalation triggered by a single miscalculation. Tonight, uncertainty defines the global mood.
Citizens across continents are asking the same question: will diplomacy prevail, or are we witnessing the early stages of a larger confrontation? For now, both sides insist they seek stability, yet neither appears willing to retreat publicly. That delicate balance keeps the situation suspended between peace and conflict. The coming days may determine whether this crisis becomes another chapter in diplomatic history or the beginning of a new and dangerous era. And as the deadline approaches, the world watches closely, knowing that decisions made now could shape international relations for years to come.